The kingdom of Saloth was known far and wide for its beauty and wealth, but it was also known for one thing above all else: its princess. Princess Lyra, the heir to the throne, was the most desired woman in the galaxy. Her beauty was unmatched, and her intelligence was respected by leaders from distant planets. Yet, despite the many suitors who came to her court, seeking her hand in marriage, she refused them all. Every day, ambassadors from powerful empires and noble families arrived at the royal palace, hoping to win her favor. They brought extravagant gifts, luxurious banquets, and endless promises of loyalty and wealth. But none of them were able to capture the princess's heart. She would smile politely, listen to their offers, and then politely turn them away. The royal court was growing concerned. Lyra was the future of Saloth, and her marriage would ensure the kingdom's stability and alliances with other planets. Yet, despite all the pressure from her advisors, she remained firm in her decision. No matter how charming or powerful her suitors were, none could meet the one standard she had set for her future husband. Her parents, the king and queen, were particularly worried. They had tried everything to encourage their daughter to choose a suitor. They invited the most influential leaders, organized grand balls, and even set up secret meetings, but nothing seemed to work. The princess would smile and nod, but her heart wasn't in it. "Why can't you see what's at stake?" her father would say with frustration. "You are the future of this kingdom, Lyra. You must choose wisely." But Lyra was not swayed. She had always been independent, valuing her freedom and intellect over anything else. The thought of marrying someone simply for political reasons made her uneasy. She believed that love, not power or wealth, should guide such a decision. As the pressure mounted, Lyra began to grow more distant. The royal court became filled with whispers and rumors about why she refused all suitors. Some said it was because she had already found someone, while others claimed that no one could meet her high expectations. But the truth was more complicated. Lyra had not yet met anyone who could make her feel the way she believed a partner should. She wanted a bond based on mutual respect and understanding, not a forced alliance. And so, the princess continued to refuse all offers. Her heart remained locked away, hidden from the world, as the kingdom's future seemed to hang in the balance. Little did she know that soon, someone would appear who would challenge everything she thought she knew about love and marriage. A human diplomat, who had no idea that he would soon capture the princess's attention in a way no other suitor ever could. The palace of Saloth was vast, with high towers and sparkling gardens, but today it seemed even larger than usual. The air was filled with the sound of hushed voices and soft footsteps as the royal court buzzed with activity. Today was different. Today, the human diplomat had arrived. His name was Alex Turner, a representative from Earth, sent to establish new trade agreements with Saloth. Unlike the usual diplomats from powerful alien races, Alex was a simple man with a calm and straightforward nature. He wasn't here to impress anyone with grand gestures or political schemes. He was simply doing his job, trying to create better relations between his people and the alien world. When Alex first set foot in the palace, he had no idea what he was walking into. The grandeur of the royal hallways was overwhelming, and the alien architecture was unlike anything he had seen on Earth. But what struck him the most was the princess herself. From a distance, he had heard stories of her beauty, her intellect, and her untouchable reputation. However, he had never imagined she would be so distant. Princess Lyra stood in the center of the royal hall, her posture regal and commanding. Her long, silvery hair shimmered in the soft light, and her violet eyes seemed to scan every corner of the room. She was surrounded by courtiers, all vying for her attention, each trying to present their best side. But Lyra's gaze never lingered on any of them for long. Her mind was elsewhere. As Alex entered the hall, he wasn't intimidated by the princess's presence, as others might have been. He had met powerful people before and understood the art of diplomacy. He walked confidently into the room, his eyes briefly meeting hers. There was a flicker of curiosity in her eyes, but it quickly vanished as she turned her attention back to her courtiers. He didn't mind. Alex had a job to do, and he wasn't here to play politics. He politely nodded at the princess and introduced himself to her advisors, focusing on the task at hand. It was only when the meeting began to wrap up that their paths crossed again. Princess Lyra, who had been observing him from a distance, found herself intrigued. This human was different. While the other ambassadors and suitors sought her approval with extravagant words and flattery, Alex had done nothing of the sort. He had simply been himself, calm, focused, and professional. She found it refreshing. "Alex Turner," she said, her voice steady as she approached him once the crowd had begun to disperse. "I must admit, you are unlike the others." Alex turned to face her, surprised by the directness in her tone. "Your Highness," he said with a slight bow, "I'm just here to do my job. No need for formalities." The princess studied him for a moment, her violet eyes narrowing, as if she were weighing his every word. "No grand gestures, no flattery. Are you truly not interested in impressing me?" she asked, her voice almost teasing. Alex smiled, a genuine expression that made his face seem warmer. "I'm here to represent Earth, not to impress anyone. But if I may say, Your Highness, your planet's beauty speaks for itself." Lyra raised an eyebrow, surprised by his honesty. "You're not intimidated by me?" Alex shook his head. "Not in the least." For the first time in a long while, the princess felt something stir inside her, something she hadn't felt in ages: curiosity. There was something about this human that made her want to know more. She had heard of his people, of course, but seeing him in person was different. He was not like the others, and in a way that intrigued her. As they spoke briefly, exchanging pleasantries, Lyra couldn't help but wonder, could this human, so unlike the others, be the one to challenge her carefully guarded heart? The days following Alex's first meeting with Princess Lyra were filled with diplomatic events, meetings, and discussions about trade and alliances. As a human diplomat, Alex had been trained to handle delicate situations, but Saloth was unlike any place he had visited before. The advanced alien culture was both fascinating and intimidating, with customs and etiquette that were completely foreign to him. Still, he focused on his work, determined to make a good impression. But in the back of his mind, he couldn't stop thinking about the princess. Her cool, composed demeanor had intrigued him from the start. Unlike the many royal figures he had met during his travels, Lyra seemed different, distant, yes, but also independent and strong. She didn't bow to expectations like the other monarchs he had encountered. Instead, she set her own rules and played by her own terms. One evening, after another long day of meetings, Alex found himself alone in a quiet part of the palace, reading over his notes. It was then that he felt a presence behind him. Without turning, he knew who it was. Her distinct, graceful footsteps made it impossible to mistake her. "Alex Turner," Princess Lyra's voice rang out, calm yet filled with authority. "I've been hearing good things about you, but I want to see for myself." Alex looked up, his heart racing slightly. He had not expected to see her in this private setting. "Your Highness," he said, rising from his seat and bowing. "Is there something I can assist you with?" Lyra smiled, but there was a challenge in her eyes. "I have a task for you, a test of sorts." Alex blinked, surprised. "A test?" "Yes," she said. "You claim to be a skilled diplomat, and yet I wonder if you can handle a task far more difficult than trade negotiations." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I want to know if you truly understand the people of Saloth." Alex narrowed his eyes, intrigued. "I'll do my best." The princess nodded. "Good. I have received word that the planet's northern border is under threat. There is a rogue faction of Salothians causing unrest, and our usual means of dealing with such issues have failed. I want you to find a peaceful solution." Alex's heart skipped a beat. This was no simple task, but the challenge in her voice was unmistakable. "You want me to handle a political situation involving a threat to your people?" "Yes," Lyra said firmly. "Show me if your words are as strong as your actions." Alex took a deep breath. This was his chance to prove himself, but the weight of the request was not lost on him. The stakes were high, and the princess seemed to be testing more than just his skills. She was watching him, studying him. He could feel the pressure mounting. "I'll accept the challenge, Your Highness," he said with resolve. "I'll find a solution." Lyra studied him for a moment, her eyes cold and unreadable, but there was a faint glimmer of something, perhaps approval, beneath the surface. "I'm curious to see how you'll handle this." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving Alex standing alone in the quiet room. He knew this was not just a test of his diplomatic abilities. It was a test of his character, of how he would approach a difficult problem when failure wasn't an option. And somewhere in the back of his mind, a small part of him wondered, was the princess testing him for more than just his skills? Alex had always prided himself on his ability to handle difficult situations. He had navigated political tensions, brokered peace deals, and solved problems that seemed impossible. But this task, the one Princess Lyra had given him, was unlike anything he had ever faced. The rogue faction at the northern border of Saloth had caused chaos for weeks. They were a group of dissidents who believed the planet's leadership had become corrupt, and they wanted to overthrow the current regime. They had already taken several villages and were threatening to move deeper into the kingdom. All traditional methods of negotiation had failed, and the planet's best military strategists were at a loss. Alex knew he had no military experience. He was a diplomat, not a soldier. But he also understood that peace could not always be won with weapons. He needed to find a way to appeal to the hearts and minds of the people, to convince them that war was not the answer. But how could he do that when he didn't even understand the full scope of the conflict? After hours of researching the faction and its leaders, Alex decided to visit the northern border himself. He needed to speak with the people, to understand their grievances. He was determined to see the situation firsthand, even if it meant putting himself in danger. When he arrived at the border, the tension was palpable. The air was thick with the scent of smoke from nearby fires, and the ground was littered with the remnants of battle. He could see the destruction in the distance, burned homes, abandoned fields, and broken families. This was not just a political conflict, it was a human tragedy. As Alex moved through the area, he was greeted with suspicion and hostility. The dissidents had taken control of the region, and they were wary of outsiders, especially humans. But Alex was persistent. He spoke with the local people, asking questions, listening to their stories. He discovered that many of them felt abandoned by the royal family, their needs ignored while the elite flourished. They wanted change, real change, not just promises. He spent hours talking to the dissidents, carefully listening to their demands. They wanted justice, a fair distribution of resources, and an end to the corruption they saw in the palace. Alex knew that solving these issues would take time, but he also knew that without addressing their concerns, there would be no peace. Finally, after a long day, Alex returned to the palace. He was exhausted, but his mind was clear. He had learned more in one day than he had in weeks of political discussions. He had seen the truth behind the rebellion, and he now understood what needed to be done. The next day, he presented his findings to Princess Lyra. He spoke not only of the political and social issues, but also of the deep anger and frustration the people felt. He suggested a solution, a way to reach out to the people, to offer them something meaningful instead of more empty promises. It wouldn't be easy, and it would require sacrifices from both sides. But Alex believed it was the only way to avoid a full-scale war. Lyra listened carefully, her expression unreadable. When he finished, she was silent for a moment, as though weighing his words. Then, finally, she spoke. "You have shown me something I did not expect," she said quietly. "Perhaps you are not just a diplomat after all." Her words were not just praise. They were a challenge. She was testing him again, this time on a deeper level. And Alex, though unsure of what the future held, knew that he had to rise to the challenge. For his sake and for hers. Alex sat in the royal chambers, watching Princess Lyra closely as she read through the report he had prepared. His mind was still spinning from the events of the past few days. The meeting with the dissidents had not gone as smoothly as he had hoped, but he had gathered enough information to make his case. Now, it was in Lyra's hands. Would she listen to him? Would she act? As Lyra finished reading, she set the report down on the table. She didn't speak right away, her eyes locked on the document. Alex could see the wheels turning in her mind, weighing the situation, analyzing the options. "Your Highness," Alex ventured, breaking the silence. "Do you think my proposal has merit?" Lyra looked up at him, her violet eyes sharp and calculating. "It's a bold proposal," she said, her voice steady. "One I would not have considered before, but—" She paused, and Alex could feel his heart race. The princess was always so composed, so controlled, but there was something different about her today. There was a flicker of uncertainty in her gaze, something that Alex hadn't seen before. "But what?" he asked. Lyra sighed, leaning back in her chair. "But I fear the consequences. The people may accept your words, but there are others within my court who will not. They want blood. They want to crush the rebellion, not negotiate." Alex nodded slowly. He had expected as much. The royal court was full of conservative advisors, people who were more interested in power than in peace. But what Lyra didn't know was that Alex had already anticipated this challenge. "You're not alone in this," he said. "There are others in your kingdom who believe in change. They may not be loud, but they're there. The key is to find them." Lyra raised an eyebrow. "Are you suggesting a secret alliance with people in my own court?" Alex smiled slightly. "Not just your court. The people on the ground. The ones who are suffering. They are your strongest allies, Your Highness. You just need to listen to them." He paused, letting his words sink in. "You don't have to do this alone. Together, we can rally the ones who believe in peace, the ones who understand the true cost of war. But it will take courage." Lyra was quiet for a long moment, clearly deep in thought. Alex watched her, unsure of what she would say next. Finally, she spoke, her voice soft but determined. "I see now why you were sent here," she said, her gaze meeting his. "It wasn't just to negotiate a trade deal or arrange an alliance. You were sent here to help me see the truth." Alex didn't know what to say. He had never intended to become her ally in such a personal way. But hearing her words made him realize that, somewhere along the line, he had become something more than just a diplomat. He had become someone she could trust, someone who could help her see a way forward. "Thank you," Lyra continued. "I will need your help if we are to succeed." Alex nodded, his resolve hardening. He would help her. For her people, for the future of Saloth, and for himself. This was no longer just about diplomacy. This was about standing up for what was right, even if it meant going against the old ways. Together, they would face the challenges ahead. The weeks following Alex's proposal felt like a blur. Tensions in the kingdom were higher than ever, as the rebellion at the northern border continued to rage. Princess Lyra had started listening more closely to Alex's advice, but the path ahead was still uncertain. She had begun to take small steps, gathering support from those who shared her vision of peace, but every move she made was met with resistance from those in her court who believed that force was the only way to restore order. Alex could see how much the situation was weighing on Lyra. She was still as composed as ever, but there was a subtle shift in her demeanor. The pressure was taking its toll. Late one evening, after a long day of meetings, Alex found her standing alone by the balcony, staring out over the palace gardens. The sky was a deep shade of purple, and the stars twinkled brightly above them. "Your Highness," Alex called softly, stepping out onto the balcony. "Is everything all right?" Lyra didn't turn immediately. She stood still, her posture straight and dignified, as if the weight of the world rested on her shoulders. Finally, she spoke, her voice quieter than Alex had ever heard it. "I feel trapped," she said, her words barely above a whisper. "The people demand action, and my advisors demand loyalty. But I can't simply give them what they want. If I do, I'll be no better than the tyrants who came before me." Alex approached her slowly, sensing the vulnerability in her voice. It was a side of Liara he hadn't seen before. The powerful princess, the unshakable leader, was cracking under the pressure. "You're doing the right thing," he said gently. "You're standing up for what's right, even when it's difficult. That's what makes you different from everyone else. You're not just a ruler, you're a leader." Liara turned to face him then, her violet eyes searching his face. "I don't know if I can keep doing this," she admitted, her voice breaking ever so slightly. "I want to bring peace, but it feels like the whole world is against me. How can I lead when everything seems to be falling apart?" Alex could see the pain in her eyes. He had always known her to be strong, but now she was showing him the weight of her responsibility. It was a weight he didn't fully understand, but he could feel the depth of her struggle. "You don't have to do this alone," Alex said, his voice steady. "You've got people who believe in you, people who will stand with you. I'll stand with you." For a long moment, Lyra didn't say anything. She simply looked at him, as if weighing his words. Then, without warning, she stepped closer, her expression softening. "Thank you," she whispered. "I don't know what I would do without you." The words were simple, but they carried so much weight. Alex could feel his heart race, not from any romantic desire, but from the deep connection he felt with her. He hadn't expected this quiet bond that was growing between them. But somehow, in the midst of all the chaos, they had found something in each other that was real. "We're in this together," Alex said, his voice firm. "We'll find a way. And we'll do it the right way." Liara nodded slowly, a faint smile playing at the corners of her lips. It wasn't a smile of relief, but a smile of resolve. The path ahead was still uncertain. But now, for the first time, she felt like she wasn't facing it alone. As they stood there together in the cool night air, a sense of determination settled over them both. They had come a long way, but the real challenge was just beginning. The plan had been set. Princess Lyra, with Alex by her side, had begun to carefully navigate the political minefield that was the royal court. They had gained the trust of a few key allies, and slowly more voices were speaking out in favor of the princess's vision of peace and diplomacy. But despite their efforts, a dark cloud still loomed over their work. The resistance in the royal court was growing stronger, and there were whispers of betrayal. Lyara's advisors, those who wanted war, had been plotting behind closed doors, hoping to sway her decision in favor of military action. They believed that only through force could the rebellion at the northern border be stopped. For them, peace was an impossible dream. They saw strength in bloodshed, not in negotiation. Alex could see the change in Lyra. She had always been strong, but now, with every day that passed, her burden seemed to grow heavier. The once confident, calm princess was now caught in a dangerous game, her heart pulled in one direction by her desire for peace, and her duty to her people pulling her in the other. It was as if she was slowly being torn apart. One evening, as they walked through the palace gardens, Alex could sense the weight on her shoulders. She had been quieter than usual, her eyes scanning the horizon as if looking for a solution that didn't seem to exist. "Your Highness, you've been quiet all day," Alex said, his voice gentle. "Is everything all right?" Lyra sighed and stopped walking, her gaze still fixed on the distant stars. "I feel like I'm losing control," she said softly. "The voices against me are growing louder, and I'm beginning to doubt my ability to hold everything together." Alex stood beside her, his hand resting on his chin as he considered her words. "You've done more than anyone else could," he said firmly. "You've brought people together. You've listened to the ones who needed to be heard. That takes courage." Lyra turned to face him, her expression pained. "But it's not enough, Alex. The kingdom is falling apart. People are suffering, and I can't keep promising them peace if it's not even possible." Alex could hear the desperation in her voice. He knew she had always been strong, but now she was beginning to question everything she had worked for. The pressure was overwhelming, and the weight of leadership was more than anyone could bear alone. "You're not alone in this," Alex said quietly. "I'll stand by you, no matter what. You don't have to carry the burden of this decision on your own." Liara gave him a small, weary smile. "I appreciate that more than you know, Alex, but the court is pushing me to make a decision. If I don't act soon, they'll force me to choose war over peace, and I'm afraid I'll lose everything if I do." The threat of war was real. Liara knew it, and Alex could see the fear in her eyes. It was a fear he had not expected to see from someone so regal, so composed. But he understood now. Liara wasn't just fighting for peace. She was fighting for her people's future. She was fighting for her kingdom, and for the chance to lead them into a world that wasn't built on destruction and conflict. "You don't have to decide right away," Alex said. "There's still time to make a different choice. We just have to find the right moment." Liara nodded, but the uncertainty was still there. She had come so far, but the hardest part was still ahead. The court was forcing her hand, and she had no choice but to make a decision. But would it be the right one? As they stood together in the gardens, the night air heavy with tension, they knew one thing for sure. The road ahead was fraught with challenges, but no matter what happened, they would face it together. The tension in the royal court was unbearable. Liara had done everything she could to avoid a war, but the pressure from her advisors and the powerful factions in her kingdom was growing stronger. They wanted action, and they wanted it now. The rebellion at the northern border was becoming more violent by the day, and the people were demanding a solution. Her kingdom was on the brink, and it seemed that no matter what she did, there would be no way to keep peace. Alex had never seen Liara so torn. She had always been strong, always had a clear vision, but now she seemed to be on the edge of a breaking point. Every conversation with her advisors seemed to push her closer to a decision she didn't want to make. She could feel her kingdom slipping through her fingers, and no matter how hard she tried, the weight of leadership seemed unbearable. One evening, as the moonlight bathed the palace in soft light, Liara stood by the balcony again, staring out into the distance. Her face was unreadable, and her posture was stiff with tension. Alex, having spent the day navigating more discussions with her advisors, knew this was another one of those moments when she was lost in her thoughts. "Liara," he called softly, stepping closer. "You're not alone in this." She turned to him, her eyes tired but still carrying that determination that Alex admired so much. "I know," she replied, her voice quiet, "but sometimes it feels like I am. The court is pushing me to make a decision, and no matter what I choose, I lose something. If I choose peace, I risk everything, my throne, my people's trust. If I choose war, I risk the very future I've been fighting for." Alex walked closer, standing beside her. "You've already shown your strength, Liara. You've fought for peace every step of the way. No one can take that from you, and the people who truly believe in you, they'll stand by you." For a moment, she didn't say anything, but Alex could see the way her mind was racing, the weight of her decision pressing down on her shoulders. He had come to admire Liara not just for her leadership but for her compassion. It wasn't easy to lead with her heart, but that's exactly what she had done. And that was why Alex had stayed by her side through all of this. "I have an idea," Liara said suddenly, her voice sharp with determination. "I can't change the way the court thinks overnight, but I can show them that my people come first." Alex looked at her, intrigued. "What do you mean?" Liara took a deep breath and turned back to the balcony, her eyes scanning the distant horizon. "Tomorrow, I'm going to address the court in a way they never expected. I will put the future of my people before politics and alliances. I'll show them what leadership truly means." Alex could see that she had made up her mind. He was unsure of what she was planning. But one thing was clear. She was about to make a grand gesture, a statement that would forever change the way her people viewed her. The next day, the royal court gathered, as they always did. The tension in the room was palpable, with every advisor and noble waiting to hear what Lyra would say. The princess stood before them, her expression strong. Yet there was something different about her presence today. It wasn't just the usual royal composure. There was something more, something fierce, something undeniable. "I stand before you today not as a ruler," she began, her voice echoing through the grand hall, "but as a leader who has seen the cost of this conflict. My people are suffering, and I will not let them be torn apart by war. I choose peace, not because it is easy, but because it is right." The room fell silent, the weight of her words sinking in. Alex watched from the side, feeling a swell of pride in his chest. Lyra was doing it. She was making the stand he had always known she could. "I will work with all of you to find a solution that brings us together. But I will not compromise on the future of my people," Lyra continued. "I will not let fear and violence dictate our path forward. The people deserve more than that." Her words were a challenge, not just to her advisors, but to everyone who had doubted her. It was a statement of strength, one that would mark a turning point in her reign. As she finished speaking, the room remained still, but Alex could see the change in the faces of the court members. The seed of doubt had been planted, and for the first time, Lyra's true leadership shone through. The silence in the court was deafening. Princess Lyra's bold words hung in the air, as if the weight of them alone could shift the entire course of history. For a long moment, no one spoke. The nobles and advisors exchanged glances, their minds racing with the implications of what she had just declared. It wasn't what they had expected, but it was exactly what they needed. Alex stood in the corner of the room, watching the scene unfold. He had always known Lyra was different, but seeing her take control in such a powerful way made him realize just how far she had come. She was no longer just a princess playing a role. She was a true leader, someone who was willing to fight for what was right, even if it meant defying the expectations of her people. Lyra's eyes scanned the room, her gaze steady and unwavering. She had made her decision, and now it was time to let the court know she wasn't backing down. The room was still tense, but there was a shift in the air. The power dynamic had changed. Finally, one of the advisors, Lord Varen, broke the silence. He was a conservative figure, known for his hardline stance on the rebellion. "Your Highness," he began, his voice laced with skepticism. "You speak of peace, but peace will not come by simply wishing for it. Our kingdom is at war. If we do not act now, we risk losing everything." Lyra's response was calm but firm. "And if we act out of fear, we risk losing what makes us who we are. We will not let violence define us. I will find a way to solve this with your help." The room fell quiet again, but this time, there was something different in the air. Some of the advisors who had initially been quiet now began to speak, their voices more tentative. Lyra's words had planted the seed of doubt in their minds. Perhaps, just perhaps, there was another way forward. Perhaps they didn't need to resort to bloodshed after all. Alex could see the shift happening. The court was beginning to see Lyra's vision, and for the first time in weeks, there was a glimmer of hope. After a tense pause, the queen, Lyra's mother, finally spoke. Her voice was soft, but filled with authority. "You have the courage to lead, Lyra," she said. "I have always known you would be a great ruler, but now you've proven it. If you truly believe peace is possible, then I will stand by you. The people will follow your example, if only we lead them with strength and conviction." Lyra's expression softened, a rare smile touching her lips. Her mother's support was more than she could have hoped for. It meant everything to her. "Thank you, Mother," she said quietly. With the Queen's blessing, the court slowly began to shift. Lord Varen, though reluctant, was no longer as vocal in his opposition. There was still uncertainty, but now it was mixed with the possibility of change. Lyra had done the impossible. She had shown her people that peace could be achieved, even in the face of overwhelming odds. Later that evening, as the sun set over the palace, Lyra and Alex stood together on the balcony once more. The world outside was peaceful, for the moment. The rebellion was not over, but Lyra had made her stand. She had shown the kingdom that leadership wasn't about power. It was about making the hard choices, no matter the cost. "Thank you," Lyra said softly, her gaze turned toward the horizon. "I couldn't have done this without you." Alex smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "We did it together," he replied. And for the first time in a long while, Lyra felt the weight on her shoulders lift, just a little. She wasn't alone anymore. Together, they would face whatever came next, and this time, she knew they had a chance to make the world a better place. The days that followed Lyra's declaration were a whirlwind of discussions, debates, and moments of quiet reflection. Her decision to choose peace, to stand up to her court and her people, had changed everything. The kingdom was still on the brink of war, but Lyra had given them a new direction, one that didn't involve bloodshed or destruction. It was a chance to rebuild, to heal, and to unite. At first, the court had resisted. Old habits died hard, and many of the advisors still believed that peace was a fool's dream. But slowly, Lyra's vision began to take root. More and more influential figures came forward, offering their support, and with each ally gained, the princess's resolve grew stronger. In the weeks that followed, Lyra and Alex worked together to broker a new plan, one that would allow the dissidents at the northern border to voice their concerns while also maintaining the unity of the kingdom. It wasn't easy. There were many who wanted immediate action, many who wanted to rush into battle. But Lyra had learned the hard way that rushing into conflict would only cause more harm than good. She needed time, and she needed patience. Alex had been by her side every step of the way. In the beginning, he had come to Xaloth as a mere diplomat, tasked with securing trade agreements. But now he had become something more. He was her ally, her confidant, the one person she could rely on when everything else seemed uncertain. Over time, their relationship had grown beyond just professional. Alex had become someone Lyra trusted with her heart, not just her kingdom. One evening, after another long day of negotiations, Lyra and Alex found themselves standing on the palace balcony once again. The night was clear, and the stars were bright in the sky. Lyra looked out over her kingdom, feeling a deep sense of both accomplishment and responsibility. "It's not over yet," she said quietly, almost as if speaking to herself. "There's still so much to do." Alex stood beside her, his presence steady and reassuring. "You've already done more than anyone could have asked. You've shown them a better way, and that's all anyone can do." Lyra turned to him, a soft smile on her lips. "I couldn't have done it without you." Alex looked at her, his expression thoughtful. "I think we both know it wasn't just me. You led them, Lyra. You made the choice that no one else had the courage to make. You're the one who changed everything." Lyra looked at him, her heart full. She had never imagined she would find someone like Alex, someone who saw her for who she truly was, who believed in her even when she doubted herself. He had been her strength when she felt weak, her guiding light when the darkness seemed too much to bear. "I don't know what the future holds," Lyra said softly, "but I know I'm ready to face it. With you." Alex smiled, a warmth in his eyes. "Together, we'll face whatever comes." And in that moment, standing there with the kingdom spread out before them, Lyra realized that this was just the beginning. She had chosen peace, but she had also chosen to lead with her heart. She knew that the road ahead would be difficult, that there would be more obstacles to overcome. But for the first time in a long time, she felt truly hopeful. The future was uncertain, but with Alex by her side and her people behind her, she knew they could face anything.